It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of AggroChat. This is episode number 17. Tonight we are joined by Ray.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Hi.
Kodra.
Hello.
And Tam.
Hello.
Who is hopefully maybe going to become a more regular member. Tonight is going to be a bit of a weird show. As you know from last week, Belghast is going on right now, and one of the bloggers that's participating is Godmother from Alternative Chat. And with the 10th anniversary of World of Warcraft, she's started her own little challenge of sorts. She's doing this thing called 10 Years, 10 Questions, where she's posted a series of questions on her blog, and she's trying to get as many people to answer them as possible. And I think the ultimate result is to come up with kind of a documentary-style podcast, almost This American Lifestyle thing, relating everyone's stories on WoW. And the goal is to have it all done before the anniversary actually happens this November. So I thought it would be cool if we answered the questions, and she was extremely excited about that. So that's the plan for tonight. We're going to kind of commence with some of our normal customs and just break straight into the questions, because I don't know how long it's going to take us. So the first question that she has on her list is, why did you start playing Warcraft? And since Tam is potentially joining us more frequently, I am totally going to pick on him. Tam, tell us why you started playing Warcraft.
I lost a bet.
You lost a bet?
Yep.
You're going to have to expand upon that.
In mid-spring 2004, when WoW was being announced, I was on the bandwagon of, I can't believe they're turning this strategy game into an MMO. They have no idea what they're doing. It's going to be a disaster. There's no way this could be fun.
See,
also, the art style looks like total crap.
I was also in that camp, believe it or not, because my first thought when I heard about World of Warcraft was, how the hell are they going to make this work when traditionally Blizzard games up to that point had just barely enough storyline to keep them from falling on their face?
Yep.
So
that's where I was at.
I couldn't see how they could make like an EQ style game out of that universe, but
and one of my friends at the time got a beta key but couldn't run it on his computer, and was like, "Look, I'm gonna buy this the day it comes out, and you need to play it with me. And I'm gonna have to put together a new computer for it, but you need to play it." I'm like, "I'm not gonna play. I'm running Fear. I'm running Planet Fear. I've got stuff to do in my other game. I'm not gonna jump to this new stupid game of yours." And he was like, "Look, just give it a week in beta, and if it sucks in beta, I won't bother with it. I won't bother you again." I'm like, "All right, whatever." So I started playing WoW in its beta in probably early summer, right between semesters.
That's about when I started as well.
Yep, 2004. And I rolled a Warlock because I was bitter.
And that's the most bitter class you could ever play.
Uh-huh. It's not even... yeah. I think we will get into that part later, but...
Okay.
But yeah, I lost a bet.
That's hilarious. Okay, so Ash, I know you started significantly later. What brought you into the game?
I entered Warcraft because I was interested in this whole MMO thing, and I checked some out in high school. I actually played the beta for Wish, believe it or not.
Yeah, which is like a game no one ever remembers, but I totally do.
So I was in the beta for that, and I didn't know why anyone would ever want to play this game. So I went off to college, and yeah, between semesters, January 2007, I decided to give this MMO that other people seem to be playing a try. I knew Tam was playing at this point.
I infected a few people.
Gave it a shot and enjoyed it quite a bit.
Very cool.
And then played for the next 4 years.
Yeah. Ray, how about you? How'd you get in?
Well, my gaming career kind of started off with Ragnarok Online. I started playing on a private server to do research for a game I was going to help somebody else with, sprites and all that good stuff. And so I kind of plugged into a gaming hemisphere, and a bunch of my friends were playing World of Warcraft at the time. I was in college, and I was trying to resist because, the whole thing was, LOL, y'all are playing World of Warcraft, nerds. And then I stopped playing Ragnarok Online, and I got bored, and my friends asked me over to dinner one night, and they left their computer sitting there. It's like, why don't you make a new character and go try it out? And I was like,
oh,
okay.
man.
Yeah. And
crack dealer.
And I was running around, I was like, this is actually kind of cool. This is a lot better than Ragnarok Online. I've been living in the Dark Ages. And then I got a trial, and then they went and got me a battle box, and it was just history from there.
Okay, Kodra, how did you get in?
So I was actually really good friends with some people that I had met while I was writing fanfiction way back then, and they were telling me how them and all of their friends were going to get started with World of Warcraft, and I was in college at that point, and I was like, well, I've finally got stable income for like the first time ever. I've always been kind of interested in these MMO things, but I never really had the funds to do $15 a month,
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll play this game with you guys. I like hanging out with you, and that's how I got started World of Warcraft on Argent Dawn with right at release. I'm pretty sure I was actually maybe a month after release.
Cool. Okay, so for me, mine is a much more sordid tale in that I was a long-time EQ player. I played it for a little over 3 years. Then I played Dark Age Camelot for, I think, another 3 years. And when World of Warcraft came out and the beta happened, I was working at a development shop, and there were tons of gamers, and we were playing City of Heroes. And one of my friends got into World of Warcraft and brought it up to work, and we played it, and it looked like the most amazing thing ever. And then one of the stress test weekends happened, and I got in. And from that point on, it basically ruined City Heroes for me. It was just so much better than what else was on the market at the time. So for the next year or so, between when we were in early closed beta and release, I started a forum and was, doing my traditional thing of gathering up all the people that I knew that were going to play and trying to get them pointed in the right direction. And at launch, we had, 50 or so people in House Stalwart, and we also had the Burning Scar, I believe, on Silverhand. We were trying to play both Horde and Alliance, and that was a mistake. But basically, that was WoW is the start of me as a guild leader, and I really only did that because I had such a lousy experience with a specific guild leader in EverQuest, and I figured, the only way that I could make sure that didn't happen again was to, kind of pick up the mantle of leadership myself, and so far it's worked out.
Was House Stalwart actually a thing from the launch of WoW?
Yeah, it was a day one guild. Like Verney, I don't know if you guys have ever really played with Verney, but he's another local. And the day the game came out, we created Night Elves and ran through all the quests and basically planned on having these as throwaway characters so that we could afford the money to buy a guild charter. And by, probably noon that day, we had the guild up. And then as soon as we could get into Dead Mines, we chain ran Dead Mines with the purpose of selling everything that wasn't equipable immediately so that we could buy a guild tabard. So yeah, it was a day one thing, and Shiana was in, and because Shiana had played with us in Horizons, so that's where Shiana and Rage came from, and then we all played again together in City Heroes, and House Stalwart kind of sprung out of those things, and then a mix of like a lot of the people I played EQ with and DOC.
I was about to say, I thought you were part of Cerulean Sanctuary.
Cerulean Sanctuary happened after House Stalwart.
Oh.
Cerulean Sanctuary wasn't a thing until well after LNR started.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, Shiana, I'm sure, isn't on the podcast, obviously, and he can't tell you the specifics, but Cerulean Sanctuary started off as a channel, and it was people running what was the high-end content at that time. It was just like basically these are good people to group with.
Okay.
So that if you ran Upper Blackrock Spire or you ran any of the top-end dungeons, we were just using it as a way to make sure everybody, was doing well. And then at some point, Shiana felt like he kind of needed to distance himself from one specific guild. So I think that's the point at which he created Cerulean Sanctuary.
Yeah, this is a long ways later, though.
Yeah, that's like a year and a half maybe into WoW, but yeah. So Shiana was originally in House Stalwart, and a lot of Shiana's friends picked Horde side over Alliance, and we'll get into that later on another question. But anyway, that's how I got into WoW.
Okay.
Okay, so question number 2. What was the first character you ever rolled? Tam, I'm going to pick on you again. I'll go in the same order I did previously.
Beta or live?
Either.
So, I rolled a lot of characters early on. Because I would make characters. I've been heavy into the role-playing scene for a while, especially when I was coming off of, I believe, Shadowbane. And so I created a bunch of characters early on to the point where I can't tell you what the first one I actually made was. I made the Warlock in beta because I was like, I'm going to pick the class that is least like anything I would normally play.
Lowest chance for me to enjoy.
Because I know I'm not going to like this game. It's not even a PvP game because that's what I was doing at the time, was playing hardcore PvP games. And so I played the Warlock. I did horrible, horrible things to people in Stranglethorn Vale. But my first live character that I played with any seriousness was actually my recreated archer from DOC, who was a Night Elf Hunter. So the human rogue that everybody associates me with was not even my first character.
Yeah, that's the same with me. Like, Belghast was, I don't even know, like, my 10th character. Okay. Let's see, Ash, what about you? What was your first character?
My first character was the class, but not the race everyone expects from me. My very first character in WoW was a Night Elf Druid named Anarune. I'm fairly certain this wasn't an auto-generated name. But I didn't end up playing much of it after I discovered the Hunter, and I enjoyed the Hunter.
Yeah, I just can't picture you as a Hunter. Like, I don't know why. Like, that's just a thing. Like, you are a bear to me. Like, and you will always be a bear.
Yeah, I leveled my Druid a bit because... No.
Oh, well. No, continue, Phil.
Yeah, I leveled my Druid because we needed tanks for stuff. So I ended up playing the Druid a bit more than Hunter at times. But the Hunter was my first main, really. But the Druid was still the first character.
Okay. Well, everything's right with World. You were at least a bear from the start. Okay, Ray. What about you? What was your first character?
Well, when I first started playing, I just had classic WoW, and I think I was even on a trial account to begin with, so I had started a Warlock. I figured, that sounds kind of cool and magic-y and ranged, and I'd played a wizard in Ragnarok Online, and eventually a high wizard, so I was thinking, this probably is the closest thing to that, right? Well, once I actually got the Burning Crusade expansion, because that was about the time that I started playing, I asked my friends, you guys are max level and rating, what could you use the most? And they said, well, we really could use a shaman right now because we don't have anybody that's playing a shaman. And so I started the shaman. My Warlock was about 17, so I didn't lose a lot of ground. And the shaman was just the shaman. That was me from then on.
Yeah, and that's the person I met you on first, was your shaman.
Totems!
Okay, Kodra, how about you?
My first character I ever rolled was Dynar, Night Elf
Really?
Rogue. Yep.
Man, you went straight to the point.
Yep. Well, have you? But honestly, have you ever known me to be really heavy into alting?
No, not really.
Like, I stick with what I pick typically.
Sometimes to your detriment.
Often to my detriment. It's actually really funny. I was remembering how I was talking to some coworkers of mine who were also getting into WoW at the same time, and I was like, I don't know, what race do I want to be, guys? Like, I kind of like the idea of Night Elf because apparently their racials let them be stealthier, but like, there's also the Gnome, and somebody was trying to tell me that Gnome had really good racials. No one ever thought, man, you know what would be a good rogue? Humans.
which is sad since they were
He's a little
pretty
my
awesome.
bitter tears.
Yeah, and this is all pre-race change, so grats, you get to dodge a bunch.
Yep.
Man.
Okay, well that's actually cool. Like, I mean, I honestly expected all of us to like kind of ping pong around before we picked our main, but yeah, you're the one of us that actually got it right the first time.
I don't know if I got it right. Like before I wanted to raid and I had no idea how I was ever going to get into a raid as a rogue, because once I got to 60 I looked around and was like, everyone is a rogue. Holy crap, how am I going to differentiate myself? So this is like the one time when I did really get into ulting. I burned up a level 60 dwarf priest because I was like, you know what can get into any raid? A dwarf
Priest, yeah. Fear Ward for the win.
And let me tell you, that dwarf priest got his workout in the late night raiders, because we had one dwarf priest regular in our raid, and so it was like, hey Dinar, he's off tonight. Could you bring your dwarf priest? Yeah.
Okay. Me. My first character was, in both beta and in release, was a dwarven paladin. And I have always loved clerics and like battle clerics, like the battle priest cleric. And the paladin was the closest you could get to that in WoW. And the thing is I'm still a little bitter about this because there was a significant amount of bait and switch that happened between beta and release.
Well, in between release and like a month after release.
Yeah. So the big problem is, like, I ran around with a good friend of mine at the time who was playing a holy priest. And the synergy between the paladin strike system that was in beta and the holy priest was freaking amazing. I would debuff targets against holy damage, and then he would come in and smite, and it was so much fun. And then at that point, like, I guess there was a point at which I completely didn't pay attention to the seal system when it went in. So release happened, and I roll a paladin, and I'm like, what the hell is this crap? And I still tried to make it because I was committed to the notion of the battle priest. And I don't know, like, I got to the point where it felt like it was very hard for me to solo. And then we had a major death in the family, and I was gone for a long period of time. And when I came back, everyone in the guild was like 10, 15 levels higher than me. So instead of struggling to solo with the paladin, I rolled a hunter and leveled it up as quickly as I could. And before I know it, I had caught up, and then that ended up being my first 60. And then Shiana happened to need a hunter in Late Night Raiders to replace somebody that nobody really liked in that group.
Gee, that doesn't sound familiar at all.
Yeah, so, and then once I started getting geared, I felt obligated to be Loden the Hunter instead of Exeter the Paladin. So, yeah, I was all through vanilla, I was a hunter, and for anyone that knows me post that period of time, that's like the least likely class that people would think I would play.
Well, you share that, I guess.
Yeah, so, but ultimately, there reached a point where I wanted to tank, because I was the original Belghast was a character from DOC, and he was a tank/off tank, a Celt champion. So I wanted to tank really bad, so I decided, okay, I'm going to focus Exeter onto tanking, my paladin. And back then was the whole Seal of Rage thing, and it was just impossible to tank instances with it. People were constantly pulling off me, and it just got frustrating. And I had a friend of mine that I had played with since the early days of Stalwart, she decided that she really wanted to play a priest. She had played a rogue for a while and played a hunter, and then she decided she wanted to roll a priest, and that's Isla / Feeny / Ricci / whatever. So we decided, okay, she's going to roll a priest. I'm going to roll a human warrior. And that was when Belghast finally was born. And that's the character that most people knew me as. But like I said, that was probably, I don't know, like by the time I rolled Belghast as a prot warrior, I had probably made 5 other warriors along the way that never really made it very far.
That is probably actually like after I left, I think maybe. I don't remember Belghast.
I really only I didn't ever bring Belghast to Late Night Raider stuff other than like the ZG.
Okay.
That's when I actually started playing with LNR, not LNR, NSR, because they needed tanks, and it allowed me to get some experience tanking as a warrior.
Oh.
So, while we were still working in AQ40, they were working on clearing BWL, and I was tanking for them. And then when LNR fell apart, I just picked up and started maining with NSR throughout Burning Crusade. Okay, so that's the story of our first characters. Question number 3. Which factors determined your faction choice in the game? Tam.
Alliance, because I could roll humans.
Okay.
Straight up.
Nice and clean and simple.
Yep. I will rant about humans in MMOs, but I'll spare you for the time being.
Okay.
That's a boring choice.
Ash, what about you?
Alliance, because Tam was Alliance.
Makes sense. Ray, how about you?
Alliance, because my friends were Alliance, and because I like playing the nice people.
Okay.
The good.
Kodra.
Alliance, because the people I was going to be playing with were Alliance.
Okay, so this is pretty much simple so far. For me, mine is a much more complicated answer. Mostly, when the game came out, we tried to do both. Like, we tried to have Alliance on Argent Dawn and Horde on Silverhand, because those were the 2 role-playing servers that were available at launch. And the problem is, as we got higher level, we got more and more into our specific characters on one side or the other. And over time, it kind of self-sorted. I am a huge fan of dwarves, so I will pretty much go whatever faction has dwarves. So it was easy for me to figure out which my favorite was. The other thing is like, the Horde is interesting, but I have never been a huge fan of, to use Dungeons and Dragons term, monstrous humanoids. I tend to play dwarves, humans, gnomes, humanoid type creatures, but the whole beast race thing is just not anything I ever really played in role-playing games. So from the start, like, I was not that keen on the Horde. And then the whole thing with the Horde is I want to play a knight in shining armor. I want to be the valiant, warrior that rides in and saves the day and the town. And the Horde kind of had a noble savage vibe going on, and that just didn't fit my personal narrative of what I wanted to play. So that's why I ended up sorting to Alliance. But I still have a lot of friends on the Horde side, and I still kind of sort of play Horde characters on occasion just to hang out with them. Okay, so this is going to be the first, I think, real challenge question. Number 4. What has been your most memorable moment in Warcraft, and why? And this is like, the $1 million question here. Tam, putting you on the spot. Yeah, this is a hard one.
Mine isn't a positive memory.
Okay.
Kicking somebody from the raid.
I can see that.
I had been I have been doing guild leadership stuff for a long time. Before WoW, in EQ, I had a little RP guild, but they've always been casual. I don't care about how good people are at the game, as long as they're nice people and I can select out nice people. And so it wasn't until being put in a leadership position where I actually have to care about anything other than how nice the people I'm running with are, that I had to make uncomfortable, tough choices. And I kind of just flew by the seat of my pants. And people seemed to think that the choices I made were good and well thought out and put me in a position to make more of them. So it was kind of my first, like, while I had leadership positions before, it was the first time where I was actually leading anything, not just a figurehead at the front of the boat, as it were.
Yeah, and you always gave the impression that you had everything under control and you had a master strategy behind all things.
That old adage about faking it until you make it,
Yeah.
is entirely true.
Oh, it totally is.
I mostly guessed, and then I would make a decision and confidently move in that direction, and I quickly found that people would listen. And generally, when you're dealing with the madness of a raid of 40 people or more, all doing things, it almost doesn't matter what you tell people to do as long as they all do it at once.
Right. Okay.
I am still haunted by hearing somebody cry over TeamSpeak.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, having done that, it's a rough thing. Like I kind of have mostly put it out of my memory. but yeah, I can see how that can be a very memorable moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Ash, what about you?
Mine's a little weird. It's the thing that I guess people still remember me for some unknown reason. The most memorable thing is battle-raising people during the Hodir fight during Wrath, while being the main tank.
Oh, that's badass.
It is, to be fair, this wasn't a isolated incident. It was a regular incident.
But I remember the first time.
Yeah.
It was, if you're familiar with the fight, you know that Hodir takes some time to cast Flash Freeze while the entire raid needs to move to a specific... Yeah. During that time,
so you can shift out and back in.
Seconds. You have plenty of time to shift out, cast your 2.5 second res spell, and shift back in before he hits you again.
Wow. You, sir, are a badass.
And then follow it up with a Tranquility for good measure.
Oh my god.
That fight.
I saw a Tranquility one time.
I don't think I did it in that fight. I did it in some others.
That moment.
Generally, if you asked me to be an off tank, I would keep that in reserve.
That moment was to me the wow, thanks, Bobby. That moment was to me the culmination of something I saw from the very first time you rated anything, which was a calm presence of mind.
For the record, the first time I rated anything was Tam dragging me into Kara on the day I hit 70.
Look, he saved, and he managed to. I doubt he even remembers this, but he saved the group from a wipe with a very timely freezing trap.
I was a druid for that.
You came in as your hunter one time.
Nope. Hunter has never been max level.
Possibly it was another instance then. That one I do remember. One of the first times I ever ran a dungeon with you, you instinctively saved things with a freezing trap. I was like, oh, that's good.
That's what hunters were supposed to do.
Yeah, like that was the problem I had going into dungeoning, is like the Eleanor hunters were freaking amazing. So it set this high bar for what I expected from every other hunter in the game, and was sadly disappointed most of the time. So yeah.
I did discover that this wasn't standard behavior.
No, it is not standard behavior at all. You know, like I've known a ton of good hunters, but as far as the communal reception of the class, sadly, at least in the pickup group scene, it was well deserved. Okay, so that's a far cooler memory than I have for me. Ray, what about you? What's your favorite memory or most memorable moment in WoW?
Well, it's probably tied between two. The first was getting to kite the Striders on the Lady Vaj fight. I kind of had this codependency issue with my guild where I was playing because I wanted to play with them, but they couldn't play with me when I was leveling because they had max level characters, and I kind of developed this neurosis to where I had to be needed for something. And through ups and downs and lots of tribulations, it was really rewarding that they let me kite the Striders with Frost Shock, because that was a vital role. You know, we couldn't kill Lady Vaj if somebody didn't properly kite them around in a circle. So that was really happy for me. And
Awesome.
the other similar to that was getting my Hand of a Doll title whenever we killed Kael'thas and Illidan?
Maybe?
No, it was Vaj and Kael'thas.
Yeah, Vaj and Kael'thas.
Our guild we were kind of like a makeshift group, so we had, especially our healers, we had these priests who struggled a lot, especially when they put a cooldown on Circle of Healing. Suddenly, their healing numbers got cut in half, and it was
They could no longer spam Circle of Win.
Yeah, so things got harder for us. They died a lot. They were a huge reason why we didn't make a lot of progress in Old War, but that's a different story. So it was really awesome for us to actually kill Kael'thas. And as soon as he was dead, I instantly hearthed to Shatrath and went and turned that stuff in. I didn't even wait for the loot. I was like, you know what? I don't care. I've got this title. That's all I care about. The expansion starting in a week.
Awesome. Kodra, what about you?
I have so many memories, so many memorable moments, but probably the one that I remember I remember around something I did was the very first time I was with LNR in Blackwing Lair, and this was during I think towards the end of the months of Firemaw, and we were on Firemaw, and I was in chat. We were doing the go in the joust in, joust out, joust in, joust out, and one of our rogues was like, "Oh crap, guys, I don't have any bandages," and I was like, without missing a second of DPS, was able to open up a trade window and trade him some heavy rune cloth bandages, and then go back to DPSing right as soon as my debuff dropped.
Nice.
But definitely the biggest memory with WoW was not anything in game. It was when so I had become part of the Rogue and Druid chat on the server, and after I want to say I had been in the chat room for maybe 4 months at this point, a bunch of them started talking about doing a meetup in Virginia Beach, and I went out there and I got to meet a whole bunch of these awesome people I had been talking to, and that is when we got a call, I believe. Bexa got a call from Tam saying there was a spot opening up for the rogues, and he was going to try and get me in.
Oh, very cool.
Yep.
Okay, so in my blog post this week, or this morning, I talked about one event, and it was totally memorable. The first time we downed Syndragosa. Basically, we were struggling with that fight, and it was the bane of our existence for a few weeks, and at this point, I was in the kind of a pseudo offshoot of LNR at that point, or at least we were trying to theme it off of LNR during up raiding company. And we were one of those raids where we struggled and struggled and struggled, and then something would click, and then from that point on, we would never wipe to that content again. And that happened over and over and over, and there was never any of those you go for months of barely squeaking by on a fight. It's we went from not being able to do it to having it on a farm in 1 week's time. And that was just traditionally what happened. And that happened with Syndragosa as well. But we were struggling with management of getting people frozen and getting them removed from the ice. And the time we downed him, one of our hunters, Thalen, got off a shot as he was being frozen into an ice block. And so we had downed Syndragosa, but everyone was either dead or in ice. So we had to res up and run back in to loot the corpse. But almost all of my really memorable moments somehow center around raiding. And probably the most memorable from a bad standpoint was in the raid that I was in after LNR, I had quickly moved into kind of a second in command position, mostly because the leader said basically if you're willing to take responsibility, you end up being viewed as a leader. So he decided to quit the game, and as a result, he decided to just unceremoniously dump the raid in my lap. And unfortunately, that raid was very much a cult personality. I mean, it was his raid, and without him there, slowly, week by week, I watched the numbers go from, like 25 people to actually from like 35 or so people trying to get in to barely squeaking by at 25 to having 20 and trying to pull from people's friends lists to having like 10 people show up. So one of the hardest decisions I had to make was just to call the raid and dissolve it, because at that point there just wasn't much we could do to keep it going. So that's a different answer than I had given on my blog, but it's totally a very memorable from a negative standpoint. And I just felt helpless and like a failure for watching this raid dissolve around me and really not have anything that I could do to stop it. Because when the leader left, everyone else had kind of checked out. But thankfully, I still met a lot of awesome people through it, and all the people that worked well together joined Stalwart, and we formed Durnub out of that, and life moved on.
I do have just one more.
Okay.
And it's funny because I know it includes me, Ash, and Tam. When we were doing first doing Wrath content, we were doing 10-man. Our guild was doing 10-man content in Naxxramas. However, 10-man gear was less valuable.
Or was this sanctioned?
Less high level than 25-man. So we had another guild on the server called Sanctioned, who was trying to do 25-man. They didn't always have enough people, so we helped fill in, and we got some good gear out of it. We also got a bunch of headaches out of it. But my favorite story, my favorite memory, is Hygen the Unclean. And we went into 25-man Hygen, and about 2 dance cycles in, there were 8 people alive. And it was pretty much our entire guild. And those 8 people beat Hygen. It took like 15 minutes of flawless execution, but we 8-manned Hygen.
Dance Hygen.
Yeah, I remember that too. Got my staff from that fight.
You got your staff from that fight. We all earned it. But that was a funny one.
Okay, so question number 5. What is your favorite aspect of the game, and has this always been the case? And for most of us, we're not actively playing, so we're going to have to think past tense here, but Tam, what about you?
Class design.
Class design?
It is how there's a lot of argument in MMO circles about the concept of the Holy Trinity and other such like with the tank healer DPS. And something that I've learned from MMOs that I played before WoW was you need to have roles. In a multiplayer cooperative game, you need to be different but equally important. And WoW is the first game that I feel really got that right. In a lot of other games, like certainly I feel this way about EQ, there were different flavors, but usually there was a right one.
Yeah, there was a best case scenario that everyone wanted.
Yeah, there was the right answer, and then a bunch of it's good enough answers, and then some usual like, well, I guess. But in WoW, every class had a point, and honestly, the times in the game where it's weakest is when one class or another just doesn't have a point.
Yeah.
And why Wrath is a great example. Like, why play a rogue in Wrath? Kind of outshined by everything else.
The best DPS in our guild for a very long time was a rogue.
It's true, and she was and she was excellent at it, but she was very much hounded by that issue, and notably, she did even better when she played a different class. But,
it's true.
But the arc of class design is really, really interesting. I mean, I'm incredibly biased because that's sort of where I lean in my career, but that whole concept is really interesting to me, and I've returned to the game a couple of times despite having checked out of it just to play whatever the new class is to max level so I can absorb it and understand it and see
Right.
what new things they've done.
Okay. Ash, what about you?
I guess my answer is kind of similar. I like the feeling of playing the WoW Druid is not something I've gotten from any other game I've played since, really. It was just incredibly versatile and probably a little overpowered in its versatility. It's from when I started, which was Burning Crusade, through the end of Wrath. It was capable of doing lots of things simultaneously, even if some of them weren't always the best. Even if I went into something spec'd as like DPS, I could still, in an emergency, tank or throw out a Tranquility and save people. And I haven't seen any other class like that in any other game. I'm also mildly annoyed. Cat annoyed me because it diminished that greatly. And it tried to give it back in like the last tier of talents, but didn't do a great job of it.
Okay.
But I liked that, and haven't seen it in any other game since.
Cool. Okay, Ray, what about you?
Well, my most recent favorite aspect from the last session that I was playing, was probably the pet system. I was just taken with the mini pets ever since I first started playing, and another one of my happiest moments in the game, I could have mentioned earlier, was that one summer festival thing when I got the little mini Scorchling, and for like a year, I was the only person I really knew that had a Scorchling pet, and I got it on my Elemental Shaman, and that's
So it was perfect.
Yeah. And like I had Noggin Fogger ready whenever I got it, and I popped the Noggin Fogger and I ran around with my tiny elemental, and I had it out pretty much 100% of the time from then on out.
And this is why you got known as the Noggin Fogger addict.
Oh my gosh, I was trying to come up with my own achievements. I was trying to hit 10,000 Noggin Fogger consumes. I think I got to like 6,000 something. But yeah, like the tiny things, it was just so awesome. Little used, multiple definitions there, little things that made the game better. But also, the Scorchling was like the one thing that went right for me in not League of Legends, World of Warcraft. Anytime I would try to find loot and say, oh, I need to go farm this, or I need to try to get that, I would never get it on the character I wanted it, if I got it at all.
Yeah.
And that was like the story of my WoW career. I farmed Baron Geddon to try and get the stupid horse mount on my shaman. I'd killed him like 200 times, and then I go on my paladin, and she gets it on the 7th kill, and I'm like, what? Still haven't seen the Raven boss, but yeah, my little Scorchling, that was my biggest triumph.
Cool. Kodra, how about you?
For me, it's probably gonna be the dungeons, and some of the vanilla dungeon designs, like probably ones that people don't really like. Like I love the kind of mazy dungeons, the sunken temples, the Black Rock depths, like. It felt like something that I could learn and master, and I could use to differentiate myself. Like I could become a guide rather than just a participant in a instance. Like I quickly became the person who would lead people to the right places and show them the right paths. So I liked those dungeons, and for probably good reason, because I'm the only one who really liked getting lost in instances. Those haven't been back since.
Right. I've got to follow the same basic idea that, I mean, my favorite thing pretty much in any game is always the small group content and the dungeons, and I think we like the exact same kind of dungeon because I loved Blackrock Depths. I was just amazed by the fact that here's this dungeon that's a real city. Like, it feels like it could be a living, breathing, dark iron city. So the dungeons that felt that way, like Sunken Temple, it totally felt like it was a complete thing. And to some extent, it lost that aspect from Wrath on, when a lot of the dungeons felt more like a park ride, where here's this one path that you have to follow, and they were fun, but like I probably my ideal state of dungeon running was the BC era heroics, because no matter how much gear you got, they were still challenging. You could still wipe on a lot of that content, and I was a big fan of dungeons that nobody seemed to like the one with Murmur. I can't think of the name of it. The big temple with
Shadow Labs.
Shadow Labs. Yeah, I love Shadow Labs. It was long, but it was fun. Like it felt like again, here's this dungeon full of cultists for you to go explore, and yeah, there's a lot of trash, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff to fight, but it felt like an epic journey through it.
I don't like that instance much more, if not for the mind control boss.
Yeah, but I got used to the mind control boss, so.
I had a lot
And
of
back
fun
then,
with Shadow Labs too,
if you could tank, like especially if you could multi-tank Shadow Labs, you were doing good. Like that was a thing that was difficult to do, but that was also the era of you need to bring one of every CC into a dungeon, so it had its own problems. But I think more than anything, the dungeons are what I will remember from this point out. They're the things I look fondly upon. Okay, question number 6. Do you have an area in the game that you always return to? Tam.
I have always liked Stormwind City. I feel like a lot of games have areas that have a point, and Stormwind is full of little nooks and crannies and interesting little places that don't serve any real purpose in the game. Like even the most obscure quests don't take you to all of the little hidden parts of Stormwind City.
Right.
But there's a ton of stuff, all like little back rooms, little hidden gardens, just scattered throughout the city. And it's just a great space that feels natural, or sort of a bad word for it. It feels like a legitimate space. I think the only other game that I've played that has a space that feels that same level of depth is the main city in Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, because it's so freaking huge.
Yeah, but I've had that problem in a lot of other MMOs that just that care in the major cities just isn't there.
Yeah.
And I've always liked. I probably spent more time, RP walking around Stormwind City as I have, raiding.
Okay, Ash, how about you?
This is going to sound a little stereotypical, but I spent a lot of time in Moonglade. And there's nothing really in Moonglade.
No.
Except during the Lunar Festival, but it's just kind of a quiet, calm place. I have a lot of screenshots of my druid there.
Cool. Ray, how about you?
I'm trying to think, and I can't really think of anything that I really just chilled in. I mean, I hung out where people were. I'd run around major cities. I don't know. Maybe it'll come to me. I can't really think of anything right now.
Okay. Kodra, how about you?
So one of the spaces that I did spend a lot of time in, which is kind of unusual because I'm not a druid, was Moonglade. Like, for me, Moonglade came off of the moment that I had just pretty much finished up with Fellwood. And Fellwood is just a bitter, dark, ugly place.
Yeah.
And you're spending all of your time in here, and then you get to this just pristine, perfect, beautiful place, and I was like, this is awesome. This is paradise. And so I would go back there to relax.
Cool. I guess for me, like the zone that and this is gonna be weird, potentially. Well, actually, not that weird if you know me. I'm a huge fan of werewolves and vampires and all sorts of things. So the zone that I would always make a beeline for and try and figure out a way to work in when I was leveling was Duskwood. And it's a horrible zone to level through. Like, the quests are a pain in the ass, and there's a lot of running back and forth, but you're killing werewolves, and it made it all better. So the almost Castlevania aspect of that zone made me happy, and the fact that right next door you've got, Karazhan. So I like Elwyn, but after a point it was overtaken by the ERPers, and I did not want to ever level there again, so I would avoid Elwyn. I would avoid Westfall because Westfall is a horrible slog of a zone. and then I would move over into Duskwood at I think 20. And the thing that I'm fond of that zone for is kind of stupid is Morlatum. When we were leveling the first time, he killed us so many times, and every game has that mob that becomes gratifying for you to kill later. And in EQ, it was totally the moment you could go to Oasis Amar and kill Sand Giants. That was the sweetest retribution ever. So, even to this day, if I happen to be in the Duskwood area, I'll go kill Morlatum just for fun. Because he slaughtered me so many times, it's not even funny. So that's my area, is Duskwood.
So I'm gonna another aside, another memorable moment was when I was getting to 70. When TBC came out, I decided to become a serious raider and join a serious raiding guild, and this has recently been remembered as a huge mistake. But what it did mean was I was level 70 4 days after launch, and I was I was probably playing WoW 16 hours a day at this point. I took a week off of classes and all that. But I was level 70 when a whole bunch of people were just still level 60, 61, 62. And as far as I can tell, we were probably one of the first Fel Reaver kills. And the people circled around us as we were killing this thing and were cheering us on because that stupid mob had killed so many people.
I hate that stupid thing.
I will still kill it just for fun, when I go through the zone. Okay. Let's see. Question number 7. And this is not going to be anywhere near as complicated as I think Godmother had planned it to be, but the question reads, how long have you /played, and has that been continuous? So, since none of us have access to our accounts right now to actually do that math, and it would take forever, how long have you played the game? Or how long did you play the game, and which breaks did you take? So, Tam.
It's probably been, I don't know, it's probably been a couple of years now since I've last played WoW. Maybe I'm wrong.
At the launch of Mists, so about 2 years ago.
Yeah, launch of Mists was the last time a new class came out, so I did the new class.
Yeah. You did not come back when I went back for, 6 months.
No.
Okay. And you were a day one person, right?
Yeah, I was a day one person. I took a break a little bit after Burning Crusade. Enough time to get to max level in Burning Crusade because I was very burnt out.
Yeah.
And so there's that gap. I think that gap was about, I remember it as being much longer than it probably actually was. But I think that was about a 4 to 5 month gap. And then there was another gap pre-Kata.
Okay.
When I was moving back from Austin.
Ash, how about you?
I started playing right around when Burning Crusade came out and played almost continuously until I think a few months into Cataclysm. Not always doing the same thing.
Right.
Started Alliance side initially and got recruited to Horde side on Sentinels summer of 2007. And then that's when Ashgar came into being. And after that,
Yeah, no, I didn't meet you until actually Cataclysm, I think.
right before then, yeah.
Yeah.
Started playing Alliance again. Because we killed the Lich King, and then that group was pretty much done. So I came over, joined House Stalwart right before Cataclysm, stuck with that for a few months, and then came back for the launch of Mists. It's been on and off a bit, about a month at a time. A few points since then.
Okay, Ray.
Well, like I said earlier, I started about halfway or maybe towards the start of Burning Crusade. My group was still doing Kara pretty seriously at that point, so that's kind of when I started. I played pretty seriously through, I think Tier 9, the Colosseum in Wrath. right before the Lich King and Ice Crown came out. And I had stopped playing at that point because I kept trying to find a good group to go with. My guild had pretty much stopped raiding in Old War. There was a lot of issues surrounding that, and the group that I had sort of wandered off to wasn't really meeting my needs and had a bunch of dissension themselves, and it all felt very frustrating, and I just stopped playing. And I think I picked up about halfway through all the Ice Crown releases, or maybe Arthas had been released by that point, I'm not sure, but wasn't playing too seriously. Managed to kill the Lich King before, like the last week before Cataclysm came out, and played Cataclysm for a little while. I can't remember if I actually did the first raid up there or not, but I quit pretty soon after that started too. Came back when I moved and started playing with some work friends on a different server. I power leveled Audrey 2.0, and then Audrey 2.0 had better gear than Audrey 1.0, and it was all sorts of complicated. And then I quit again. I think we killed Ragnaros, and then just kind of dissolved because of other personality issues. And then I tried it again for Mists, and the group that I was raiding with really wasn't making any kind of progress, and it was like week after week not doing much besides wasting several hours. And I had gotten to a stalemate with my my Pokemon collection with the mini pets, and I just wasn't fun anymore, and I stopped. And I haven't played since. I think I played around with the free trial with Tip, one of our friends, and did not fall prey to resubbing.
Yeah, you didn't resub when I resubbed for, I don't know, that 4 to 6 months that I did.
Yeah, no.
Okay, Kodra.
So I'm pretty sure I had like over a year played when I last checked between a number of accounts, like 365 days played.
Man, I have 365 days played just on Tam.
Yeah, I think I had like 200 days played on Dinar, and I think I had like another 200 on my warrior, who has been renamed so many times I don't even know what to call him now.
Okay. Me, I don't even know how I could add up the number of hours. Like, I have 7 90s, like 7 legitimate 90s. I think 3 85 plus, another 4 80 plus, 2 or 3 70 plus characters, and then enough 10 to 30 characters that I've hit the 50 character cap on my account a long time ago. And I was a day one person. I played pretty much solidly until Cataclysm, really. It was shortly after Cataclysm that I left the game, and have kind of been nomadic ever since. I left for Rift, and then that led to something else, and something else, and something else. I came back at the tail end of Cata and the beginning of Mist, and I think maybe I lasted 3 months. And then I came back again. I don't know. I don't remember exactly when I came back, but I think it was after our initial stint in Final Fantasy. And I think I maybe lasted 4 months. I actually tried to raid again, and decided living on a schedule wasn't really for me. But yeah, so I played probably at least a solid 8 years of the 10 years it's been out. But anyway, it's a lot of hours, and I don't even want to think about how many /played hours that is. Okay, question number 8. It is written like this. Admit it. Do you read quest text or not? Tam.
Always.
Yeah, I figured that was the answer.
That's flippant, but it's kind of a lie. I don't always read it because sometimes I've done the quest before, but I kind of write quest text for a living, so yes.
Yeah, I figured as much. Ash, how about you?
I can't say always. I try to read quests the first time I do them, but I have big into alts, so occasionally I would lose track of whether I had done or not done a quest before and get confused when I didn't read the text.
Yeah. Ray.
I'm gonna go with no.
No.
I know that infuriates a lot of people, but I'm a spatial person, and seeing a ton of letters in a gigantic chunk overwhelms me, and reading tires me as it is. So when I'm playing a game, reading is generally not enjoyable for me.
Okay. Kodra.
If I'm like, I will typically like get started reading a quest, and if it continues to like grab me quickly, I'll continue reading. But typically, like, if I get bored, I'll just stop and click accept.
Okay. For me, I will say I skim every quest.
You liar.
No, I totally do. I skim quests.
You're saying that to make me feel better.
No, I skim quests, and if it looks like it's going to be an interesting quest, I will totally go back and read the quest text. But I will admit, when I do the summary look through of the quest, I'm only looking for relevant information. And if there appears to be interesting flavor with it, I will totally follow it down. Now, the catch-22 of that is I've become spoiled by voice acting in games. And when I'm playing a game that's fully voice acted, I will listen to all the dialogue. Like when I played Tor, I listened to every little bit of the dialogue the first time through. Now, on second playthroughs of his own, all bets are off and I am skipping the hell out of that quest text. But I try and at least skim all the quest text. But that's not to say I actually go back and read it. Now, I mean, there are definitely quest tests or quests that are memorable, and there are certain games where I'm far more likely to read every bit of quest text, and I'm looking at you, Secret World.
That's a different thing.
Yeah, that's a different thing. Like, if you didn't read the quest, you're screwed. But yeah, so that's I think a wide variety of answers there. 9. We're getting towards the end here. Are there any regrets from your time in game? Tam. These last two are the biggies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but I can't honestly say I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah.
At the end of the Light Night Raid arc, we were things were falling apart, and it had become very stressful, and morale was really low because we'd always been a very permissive group as far as people playing with us. And so we didn't really cull people. And so it meant that we had a lot of personality conflicts that never really got adequately resolved.
Yeah.
And so the end result of all of this was a raid that was very prone to being frustrated with itself, and where morale was this really big problem. And it was very stressful on the leadership side, trying to stay functional. And all at about the same time, our leadership eventually burned out and either had other life stuff come up or just was not feeling up to hanging on to a game, or trying to keep the raid group together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wound up at one point with a choice. I could probably salvage it. I could keep everything running. I could keep everything functional. But at the same time, I was trying to graduate college.
Right.
And I made the choice that college came first. All of these people that I've, stayed very close to for such a long time, I'm going to think of myself first. And I don't know. I still don't feel great about that. A lot of really, really bad stuff happened afterward, and there's a lot of bad blood still. And while I don't think very many people hold me responsible for it, I definitely feel responsible for it.
Yeah.
So that would probably be it.
Okay. Ash, how about you?
Well, I'm sure I can come up with something eventually. I can't really think of anything right now.
Okay. Well, I had a lot of trouble this morning when I was blogging, trying to think of anything. I've got one now, and I'll get to that in a bit, but, I totally get it. Like, I mean, there's a lot of things that happen in the game, and, like, it's hard to second-guess it, and, I couldn't think of anything at the time.
It's
Ray.
kind of weird, because I didn't have any sort of... At no point in my WoW playing was I really in a leadership role.
Yeah.
So I have nothing in that vein really ever came up.
Okay. Ray, how about you?
Well, mine was kind of like the ongoing kind of cloud of emotions that I had around me when I first started playing. I started playing because my friends asked me to, and then I felt like they had kind of abandoned me after I started playing, and I kept setting these goals for myself. It's like, if I get to this point, then they'll play with me. If I get to this point, then they'll play with me. Well, maybe if I do this, they'll play with me. And I became really obsessed with trying to prove to them that I was worth playing with and spending time with. And I based a lot of my self-worth in the game, and even to some degree my self-worth in real life, on how willing they were to do stuff with me, and it caused a lot of problems both in game and in real life, and stuff that's kind of haunted me ever since. And probably a good growing up experience for me. I do wish I could have handled some things differently.
Okay. Kodra, how about you?
Like regrets. I feel like I kind of bailed on LNR to do, like, I bailed on LNR to play with friends in real life because, like, man, it's been sort of a theme for me, is that, like, friends in real life are more important than friends online, is sort of like this meme that was constantly pushed. And I at that point I hadn't really bought into the no, friends online are just as important, and like,
Yeah.
but that's ultimately why I went over to be a horde side raider, was because I could play with you guys, or I could play with my real life friends, and real life friends mattered more to me at that point for no good reason.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said this morning, I couldn't really think of any regrets per se, and there were things that I never wrapped up. Like, I always thought it would be cool to get a Shadowmourne, and I never actually went back and wrapped that up. But as Tam started talking about his, I actually thought of one, and I don't really think of it as a regret per se, but it's more of a what if, and I've always wondered what would have happened. And so when NSR fell apart, and this is long after LNR fell apart, I basically had two paths before me. Either I could join one of the more illustrious raid groups on our server that was in Tier 6, the tier we were working on, or I could help out another friend from LNR days form the raid he always wanted to create. And I went back and forth on that, and I chose to help my friends form a raid. And man, the tail end of Burning Crusade for me was a very bitter time because of it. Because I had gone from being, main tank in a raid that was pretty well progressed in the Tier 6 content in Burning Crusade to having to start over from scratch in a combination of Karazhan and Magtheridon and Gruul and all of that, just to get people geared up enough to go back and wipe mercilessly on Tier 5. And I was bitter about it. I did not enjoy my time, especially of the early Durnup days, because I felt like it was such a step backwards for me, that I was no longer doing the stuff that I was geared to do. I was just having to sit back and wait while everyone, all 30 or so of us got geared up enough to do it again. And we never made it to Tier 6. And I was pretty bitter about that. So I can't say that I would have made the different choice, because there's always been, when given the choice, I will choose my friends over myself. But there are times that, I wonder if my life would have been a much more sane and rational during those days had I allowed myself to be selfish and just gone and tanked an already progressed raid, instead of having to struggle through content as people learned it. So that would be my, I can't say it's a regret, because like Tam said, I don't think I'd make the choice differently, but I always kind of wonder what life would have been like. if I hadn't made that choice. But that's to say, I mean, like in Wrath, the time in Durnup was great. Like I enjoyed that time so much, and it was only because we started the process during Burning Crusade. So anyway, that's my answer.
I have another less lofty regret that I
Okay.
was reminded of via an unrelated thing as you were talking.
Yeah.
For anybody on the outside of LNR, they probably viewed the trio of us who were the reigning leadership as a fairly well-oiled machine that all ticked together very nicely and seemed to work. When that was not necessarily the case, we just kept it very quiet. We disagreed a lot. At one point, while we were working on opening the AQ gates, the Encourage gates, that horrible event, we hit a point where I realized that if we really worked at it, we wouldn't, rather than just being, a 5th or 6th or 7th place raid past all of the raid guilds, we could actually compete with them directly by having, for anybody not familiar, the Encourage Gate event was this ridiculous collect a whole bunch of resources thing for your main class or for the server, but then the raids had their own mini thing that ultimately led to putting together this thing called the Scepter of the Shifting Sands, which was basically a giant rewardless rep grind that would yield, one of these items for one person in the raid. And it basically required, to do it in anything even remotely resembling Sanity, you had to basically devote your entire raid to farming, bug parts.
Yep.
And I realized that we could do it. Like, the gates hadn't opened yet. We couldn't quite, we were still working on Blackwing Lair at the time, and one of the requirements was beating it, but we could do enough of it to start the line. And I looked at what our group was good at and said to myself, hey, we could get this, we just need to get the rep, and in the time it takes to get the rep, manage to get through the rest of the dungeon, which didn't seem that horrible.
Right.
And at the time it was, well, let's be conservative, let's, get stuff done, because that's sort of an insurmountable goal at the moment, because we can't beat the raid, much less do it in a certain amount of time, which was part of the requirement. But and we'll burn people out doing that.
Right.
I farmed bug shells by myself. These were elite mobs in one zone in the game that had no drops. I farmed bug shells in that zone for about probably 16 hours a day for at least a month. The only time I wasn't doing that was when I was sleeping. I think I wasn't even in class because I didn't have classes at the time, or raiding. And I got far enough that I realized that we could do it. And I got into some bitter arguments about could we actually do it.
Yeah.
And I think it culminated. I had not slept because I had I was working on breaking into neutral, and I just hit neutral, and I needed honored. And I'd been doing this nonstop. I had pretty much paupered myself for repairs. I'd gotten to the point where if one of the other major raid groups on the server rolled in with a group in a place that I was in, or if I rolled in while they were there, they would frequently let me have it because it was the only ones I could solo, and they had the worst rewards.
Yeah.
And right before an Anixia raid one time, it probably, I don't think it would have come to blows, but I tore into one of the other raid leaders to the point where, and he tore back, and it ultimately resulted in, for I think the only time it ever happened, he up and left the raid. He was like, I can't do this tonight. I'm out. You guys go ahead. And I stepped up and led the raid that night because I was incredibly irate. I still feel pretty bad about ripping into him, though I still think we could have done it.
Yeah. Well, and we did finish it at some point, I remember.
We did, but too late.
Yeah, way too late. Okay, yeah, that's... The funny thing is like, I was actually privy to a lot of what was going on at that time, because while I was not in the leadership of LNR at all, I was somehow, like, kind of grandfathered in as just, like, an observer. So, yeah. It was kind of a dark time.
On a lighter note, I definitely regret that we never got Thunder Fury for LNR.
Look, Thunder Fury is a bitter, bitter thing.
Yeah, don't even talk to me about that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're on our very last question, and we're going to push through. Number 10. What effect has Warcraft had on your life outside gaming? Tam.
Hi, I'm a video game designer.
Yeah, pretty much.
That alone should say it, but it was my undergraduate thesis. It was the point at which I realized that I could excel at something and that I could take on leadership positions and they would work out. It was a big boost to my self-confidence in a lot of ways, and it made me more outgoing. But really, I'm a video game designer. I make MMOs for a living. WoW's kind of important.
Awesome. Ash.
Hi. I now know all of you.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah.
To a lesser extent, it's also kind of informed the way I look at a lot of other games. It's where I developed... WoW was my first MMO. So, really, it's affected the lens by which I look at everything else.
Yeah.
In the field.
Okay. Ray.
Well, I don't know. It was interesting. I messed up a couple of friendships and ended up fixing them up. Met a lot of new people. I mean, I met you, and I don't even know how that happened, but somehow you were like, "Hey, she knows how to internet," and then eventually you gave me a job.
Yeah, I was like, I met you through the raid that you were in, because I don't know how I got involved with it, but somehow I ended up filling in on a couple raids for you guys, and because I'd met Ahi and Bez.
Yeah, I don't even know how the groups were affiliated or how I even got on your radar. I just knew that you started talking to me one day, and I was like, "Hey, this guy's a guild leader, and his guild is bigger than mine." Oh, and then I don't know. It just manifested from there. I've got my job now. I was drowning in my last job, and afraid to leave because I didn't know if there was going to be anything else out there for me. And he was like, "Please apply for this open web developer position that we have." And I was like, "Okay." They were about to dump like this hideous classic ASP monstrosity on me. I was like, "Nope, I'm out."
Yep.
And I mean, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my career right now. I look forward to going to work every day. And that is entirely thanks to WoW. And, a little bit of my side work and marketing, but, it wouldn't have happened without WoW. I told my parents that because they're very Luddite and anti-gaming especially. And I was like, I wouldn't have this job if I hadn't played WoW. And I could just see their brains screeching to a halt and not being able to understand what I just said.
Okay, awesome. Kodra.
You guys, I mean, this whole friendship that I've made with you guys is something that I would never have without WoW. And it's important. It's like the biggest friendships I have. It's really, for me, it's hard to overstate how important that is to me.
Yeah.
I love all you guys.
We love you too. For me, yeah, it's like, so I was part of online communities and I was part of guilds, and I have a lot of ties that date back before WoW, but WoW is kind of the game where I came into my own, especially from a leadership perspective, and it's the birth of House Stalwart, and God, and that's got echoes all over the place, and and thanks to it, I've met literally hundreds of people that I consider just as real of friends as, anyone I happen to know in real life. And, definitely, this podcast wouldn't exist without WoW, flat out. It would, there'd never be an occasion where we would know each other.
Can you imagine a world without this podcast?
I know, it's a scary place, right? Some of you guys do know each other or would have known each other unrelated to WoW, but for me, yeah, I definitely wouldn't have the exposure. I also would not have my blog. My blog started off as a warrior blog and tanking blog for WoW, and I had other blogs that were personal, but that's really what gave me focus until I decided to just make it a general gaming thing and a general me thing. We wouldn't be doing this questionnaire if it were not for WoW. I wouldn't have known any of the people from Twitter because that was what got me into Twitter and into the blogosphere as a whole. So WoW was kind of an important thing. And I think all of us, it's hard to put into words just how big a deal it was and still is. And there are still connections. I said this before, it's really easy to quit the game, but it's hard to quit the people. And there are still people I care about playing the game, and that's why I end up periodically re-upping every so often. So yeah, it's about the people. At the end of the day, all of these experiences that, we related, they were far less about the game we were playing and more about the people we were playing them with.
Amen.
So yeah, WoW served as this focusing crystal to bring together all these forces, and I think I've got permanent lifelong friendships thanks to it that will extend past gaming entirely. So yeah, we answered all the questions, and we went way over, and I don't know if I'll make this into one or two, but yeah, we made it through, and Kodra will be off next week in Gen Con, and we will miss him.
Wish me luck as I am trying to win the Tournament of Ponies.
Yay!
And I hope you do amazing things. Anyway, so let's wrap this up with the whole where we can find each other. Ash.
All right, I am on Twitter at hidden_wings. I have a blog at ashfang.com.
Ray.
I'm still littlerayofsun.com, working on a Twitter handle.
Cool, and hopefully that will work out. Kodra.
I am at Kodra22 on Twitter, and I am thekeengamer.com, and I am posting daily because of Belghast.
In Belghast, I have been absolutely overwhelmed at the response. We have 50 different bloggers at least doing something related to it, and it's just insane how big it's gotten. Tam.
As per usual, I'm professionally obligated to not be too available. If that changes, I'll let you know.
Cool. I am always at agronaut.com and at Belghast on Twitter and Belghast on a Nook. I want to thank all of you guys for putting up with this very lengthy show, but I'm sure Godmother will be more than happy with the results. And to everybody out there, hopefully you enjoyed it. And we will see you next time. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Later.
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 Night.
Later.